Because when I want to talk to you, you're right here.
I think he's
Okay, we can come to order. Everybody have their seat. Mr. Harris, would you call the roll?
Mr. Carter. Here. Ms. Lyons.
Here.
Ms. Russo.
Here.
Ms. Clinger.
Here.
Mr. Graham. Here. Ms. Bird.
Here.
Mr. Dastra.
Here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. All right, back there, Mr. Feldman. Here. And Mr. Adams.
Here. We have a quorum. Okay, we are in session. First order of business is approval of minutes. You all received a copy of the minutes. Are there any corrections or changes to be made? Hearing none, is there any objection to approving the minutes as written? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Report from the chair. So first of all, thank you to Ross Street United Methodist Church. I don't know if there's anybody here who represents them, if they just don't lock the door.
There's nobody here.
Nobody here. Well, for the minutes, thank you to them for offering the use of the hall. We appreciate that. As you're probably all aware, we've been trying to get into each of the 4 quadrants. This is the third one to give an opportunity for people in each region to come to the meetings. I mean, the meetings are always public, but we're trying to make it more convenient. So thank you. I will also say this is the first time I think I've been warm all day today. It's nice in here. Next is welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. It's a very important task that we've been charged with. The question comes down to 2 parts. First part, which is what we're in the stage of now, is learning exactly what a charter is, what a city government does, how our city government works, whether it works, should we keep it, should we make it, change it, and so a lot of questions. Having you all here gives you the opportunity to provide your feedback and to educate us, to tell us what you think we should be doing. Like I said, the first part is the education phase. We are in that right now. That leads us into the January meetings, at which point we as a commission will deliberate and vote, make the first vote. The first vote is not to write a charter, to approve a charter. The first vote is to decide whether we should write a charter. So in January, the plan is at the end of January, we'd be meeting back in City Hall to discuss that and have a vote made as to whether to proceed. If we choose not to, which is possible, I do not know how my fellow commissioners, their opinions at this point, that would be the end, and it would stop. If we vote to proceed, then the next 9 months would consist of meeting to write a charter, effectively what I've been terming a constitution for the city of Lancaster, how the city is structured, how it works. So having the public involved every step of the way is an important aspect of this. I appreciate everybody who's here tonight. There will be a point where we've hired the Pennsylvania Economic League to assist us. They will make a presentation, it's about 10 minutes long, explaining what the process is and what we're doing. And normally, comments, public comments come first. Well, we moved it to after that so that you can all watch the presentation, listen, and then if you have any comments or questions or comments you want to make for the record, you can do so. Now back to us. I don't know, the mayor had mentioned she was planning on being here. I don't see her. But again, for the record, I want to thank the mayor and the mayor's office for providing the city audit that I sent out to everybody. It is not exactly the easiest read. I'm not an accountant. Numbers like that start to gloss over. But it is well appreciated, all, I think, 200 pages of it, or 59 pages of it. So thank you for that. And also thank you to the mayor's office for the follow-up on the I think I had listed the PFM consulting report, that we had gotten pieces of it, and I appreciate being able to follow through. It discusses the audit and is much easier to read than the audit. So an understanding of what's going on. So we have that. That's not on the agenda for this. The next item on the agenda is PEL's presentation. So if you want to proceed.
Hi, I'm Patty Moorhead. I'm the Director of Financial and Data Analytics at Pennsylvania Economy League. We were hired to facilitate and assist with the Government Study Commission process. With me is Fred Reddig and Jerry Cross. I'm playing the role of Jerry Cross tonight. He's got a little cough, so I'm taking his part here. So, the duties of a Government Study Commission. The Government Study Commission is tasked with reviewing, analyzing, and evaluating the current city government structure. It's not an inquisition, they're not there to question people or anything, but just to learn about the government structure and its operations. To do that, they interviewed some officials through questionnaires and determined the strengths and weaknesses of the current government structure. They're also tasked with studying other government structures to make sure that the City of Lancaster structure is the best one to provide, whether it works in the best interest of the Lancaster residents. And then at the end of this first 9-month process, beginning of February, end of January, beginning of February, they will decide at that point whether to recommend changes to the government structure or to leave it as it is. Oops, wrong way. So, in reviewing the government study, the work they did, they reviewed the city code. Lancaster works under the optional plan A of third-class city code. They compared this code to the structures of the government of cities, boroughs, and townships, and home rule municipalities throughout the state. They looked at they reviewed facts and figures for the cities and other towns, looked at budgets and that kind of thing. Again, they're interviewing Lancaster appointed and elected officials to understand the strengths and weaknesses, and they're going to embark shortly on interviewing appointed and elected officials of other municipalities, similar in size, different kinds, similar structures to Lancaster, as well as home rule municipalities and other cities, third-class cities. They sent out questionnaires to state officials to talk to them and get their opinions on the current structure of Lancaster City. And they meet monthly in various locations. They've brought the meetings to the people. And all of their agendas and minutes are available online through a link on the city's of Lancaster's website. So, planned more work. As you can see, municipalities shall have the right and power to frame and adopt home rule charters. The voters created, the city's residents of the city of Lancaster voted to seat a government study commission. At this point, the commission is conducting their study. That's the yellow point right there. Then again, in January, at the end of January, they're going to vote to whether they should continue on this mission and draft a home rule charter. And at that point, they'll have 9 more months to draft the charter, write the charter. Then the charter goes to referendum, and the voters either accept or reject the charter. And then the commission also helps with the transition. If in fact the residents agree with them that there should be a new form of government, they help with the transition and implementation of the charter.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Again, I'm Fred Reddick, a member of the Pennsylvania County League's team, assisting the city. I will complete the presentation here and talk a little bit about where the city is in the where the study commission is in the process in looking at the existing form of government and comparing it with other forms of government. To date, the commission is approximately 2/3 or 6 months into the 9-month schedule. I think they've done a tremendous job in reviewing an awful lot of information that has been presented to them to date. It has been a very educational process for them, and they've learned a lot and are positioning themselves to make a vote. To date, they have already prepared a series of questions that they pose to the mayor, to the council president, to the controller and treasurer, the elected officials of the city, as well as to the 6 department heads within the city, the appointed department heads. And they have received responses back from all of those individuals, and I believe they are posted on the city's, or the commission's website, on the city's website. The step that they are in right at the moment is looking at other forms of government that have been enacted in 7 additional municipalities as noted there. 4 of those have home rule charters that have been adopted: Allentown, Altoona, Easton, and Reading. They have reached out to the mayors of each of those municipalities, provided them with a series of questions, somewhat similar to the questions that were posed to the mayor and council president here in Lancaster, asking for responses. They have also reached out to 3 other municipalities that are operating with forms of government similar or very similar to what Lancaster has. Harrisburg and Williamsport currently operate under the 3rd-class city code, Plan A provisions, and Hazelton has an optional plan under the Home Rule and Optional Plan Act, which is a strong mayor business administrator form of government. They are currently awaiting responses to those questions, and they plan to do virtual interviews with the mayor or key representatives of those 7 municipalities. I want to highlight the fact, and it's been mentioned, I think, by your chair as well as Patty, that citizens have been involved in every step of the way. The home rule process is a very transparent process. It was initiated by the citizenry of the city via the vote that occurred last May that authorized the establishment of the commission and the study phase that is currently underway. The commission has had monthly public meetings that have been held, and the last 3 have been in 3 of the 4 quadrants of the city. The 4th one in January will be at the remaining quadrant of the city, so that an opportunity has been presented to the citizenry to provide public input, and certainly you will have that opportunity this evening. At the end of the 9-month process, basically the latter part of January or into early February, the Commission will be making a decision on whether the existing form of government meets the needs of the city of Lancaster in the best way possible, or whether it's deemed that a better form of government could be established that would better provide for the services and meet the needs of the citizenry of Lancaster. If that happens, there will be an additional 9-month period to write that charter, which then will go to a vote by the citizenry to decide whether to accept that charter or not. What a home rule charter really does is it shifts the authority from state government to the local government. It really provides a constitution, if you will, for the city, for any home rule municipality. Basically, right now, the city operates under what is termed Dillon's Law, in that it's only allowed to do what state law authorizes it to do. With home rule, the city is allowed to do anything that is not otherwise prohibited. There are certain statutes that the state has enacted that are applicable across the board. Things that deal with personnel, such as the collective bargaining statutes, for both non-uniformed and uniformed employees, the state planning code, acts that are applicable across the board. Those would remain in place. However, the city would break free from the third-class city code, and the home rule charter would become its code, its constitution to operate under. As I indicated, the city or the commission will make a decision sometime the end of January into early February on whether or not to draft a charter. If they decide not to draft a charter, then a final report is developed by the commission that would outline the work that they did and their recommendation and the reason for their recommendation, and issue a final report, and they would be dismissed at that point in time. The city would continue to operate under its current form of government, and there would be no change in the form of government unless there was a new study commission that was elected down the road. If they vote yes, then we do move into the next phase of writing that charter, and as I indicated, there would be a 9-month period to actually write that charter. Again, that process would allow for public input from the citizenry. There would be public meetings that would be held, and I'm sure that should the commission move down that road, they would provide ample opportunity for public input. At the end of that process, though, the charter goes back on a referendum, and the citizenry would make a decision on whether to enact that charter to become the new law, the new constitution for the city. And with that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the overview of the process, and certainly we are able to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. For Brazil, want to recognize Mayor Sirachi is here, so thank you for attending, Your Honor. We appreciate it. I appreciate all your insight and assistance with this. Before you got here, I also thank you for getting us the city audit and allowing us access to the PFM consulting report, so thank you for that. At this point, open up the floor for any public comments or questions. And I want to say before you speak, if you do speak, please provide your name and the street on which you live, and recognize that this meeting is live streamed and recorded, so that you will be recorded. You're agreeing to that by standing up. So yes, please.
Thank you for the warning. Hi, my name is Katerina Solos. I live in the southwest quadrant, but I wasn't able to make that meeting on St. Joseph Street, so very pleased to be up in this quadrant. I'll try to keep this brief, and there's sort of two elements to what I want to say, a little bit nostalgia and a little bit confessional. I, like many people here, chose to live in Lancaster. Moved here 5-6 years ago, and just in the 15 minutes here, I've met someone who moved here a few months ago. People have been here for generations. Lancaster is special, we know that. That's why there's so much energy and commitment. And as hard as these 9 months are going to be, if the vote is yes, the next 9 months are going to be really hard. So thank you for stepping up. I am a native New Yorker. I was born in New York City. I know there's at least one other in the room. I won't point them out. But I'm a child of the 70s, and I learned about politics in 1975 when New York City went bankrupt. I graduated 5th grade as, fifth grader. I came back in 6th grade, no sports, no extracurriculars. The schools changed overnight. Luckily, I had a great experience in New York City public schools that propelled me forward. But I was like, whoa, what is this? What are the budget cuts? Whenever, as kids, we asked something, well, what happened to this, what happened to that? The budget cuts, the budget cuts. I didn't know what that meant. It's like just something adults say. But it stuck with me. I mean, I still kind of remember the confusion we felt when our school experience, our life experience in the city, and if any of you were in the city or visited the city, it took decades for New York to recover from that bankruptcy. The confession piece is I've spent most of my adult life as a corporate finance lawyer, and so I have patience for numbers, I can read through contracts, and I've worked on a lot of privatizations. I appreciate the procedure that was presented by this slideshow, and I'm sure you've had a lot of talk about the substance, but the risk here for Lancaster is bankruptcy. And what happens after bankruptcy, really queer things happen in bankruptcy. It's like if you remember the old television commercials for learn how to be a real estate investor. Find a motivated buyer. Find somebody in distress, buy cheap. Okay, that's what happens to institutions in bankruptcies. They're literally called vulture funds. And I'm not happy to say I've worked for someone. They will come around and they will want to buy the assets. It could be water, we always talk about water, it could be this, it could be that. And it seems, when you're in distress, like it's a solution. Let's get a lump sum of money now, and we'll fix our budget. But then you have to keep paying. And the people who bought the assets, they just want that stream of income. So it's whether, if we don't go forward with home rule, we'll be still in the same position, having to deal with some really tough stuff. The great thing about Lancaster is we're facing this head on. So I've been really wanting to come to these meetings, and I'm so appreciative of the work that's being done here. But it's not a tomorrow problem, it's a now problem, and the consequences are severe. It's my introduction to political economy was the bankruptcy of New York City. So let's try and avoid that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kat. Any other members, please?
I'm John Gavea. I live in the 100 block of East Orange Street. And I just have a question. When you have this vote in January, is that going to be an open public meeting or a closed session of the panel?
All our meetings are public, so it will be open to the public. It will be a deliberation meeting. Yes. Ma'am.
I'm Elizabeth Hoffman. I live on East Ross Street. My big question to Kat is, are you saying home rule will protect from bankruptcy, or what we have is going to back? I'm just confused about that. Which side that's leaning to?
I apologize. I urge the commissioners to vote for home rule because it's the next best alternative. You have to analyze, if you keep it the same, and there are no options if we stay the same. There are no options as a third-class city for revenue. And, you have the budget. So I'm very, very much urging, thank you, Elizabeth, vote yes.
And so ask another question. Yeah. So has any municipality looked at home rule and said, no, we're not going to do that? Or has everyone who's looked at it said, yes, let's do this?
I will defer to PEL.
There have been some that have rejected home rule. Right now, there are approximately 75 municipalities, cities, boroughs, and townships, as well as counties, that have enacted home rule charters. But there have been some that have rejected them.
Either at the beginning stage, and the citizens refuse to form a home rule study commission, or the citizens reject the charter proposed. That's happened.
And that kind of leads into my next question. Is the charter, is there kind of a template for charters, or do you just you're just wide open, put anything in a charter? How long is it? How do people know how to vote on it? It seems, I don't know if it's a huge thing or a okay thing.
A charter is would be the city's constitution, if you will. To start with, it's an open book, but it may be, one option may be for the city to take a look at the current structure and pull out those elements that they don't like and add in those elements that seem to make sense. We have a number of charters. I think some have already been provided to the commission. We certainly, if they move to that step, we will provide them with charters from municipalities somewhat, comparable to Lancaster in nature. There is no one size fits all. I think the charter needs to be unique to the needs of that given municipality, to address the needs of that municipality so that the needs of the citizenry are met in the best structure and framework possible.
Thanks.
As to how the citizens would know what's in the charter and how to vote, the commission has a duty to educate. If they do recommend a charter and they prepare one, they have a duty to educate the public on what's in the charter, what would the charter change versus what they have now. And that would be a public education campaign prior to the vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Steve Garner, 200 block of East New. You mentioned it briefly, but I'm kind of curious, is there a list somewhere that tells us what we're prohibited by the state from being? I'd like, to see the whole.
And we had provided earlier to the commission a list of those laws that are applicable across the board. I cited several, as I said.
I'm just curious what's off the table in this whole thing. I'm new to this whole thing.
There's a manual online from the Commonwealth.
Okay.
And that does a good job of explaining.
I'll hit you up after the meeting if I can get that.
Oh, yeah, it's on the state.
We can provide a link.
Yeah, we can give you the link.
Yeah, we can provide a link.
If you go to the city website, you type in home rule commission, there are you scroll down, there are 4 boxes. Agendas, meeting minutes, meeting materials. So the meeting materials are all the things we're given to do our homework. We want to learn and educate ourselves. And then the other one is there's also a feedback form. So if you don't want to speak tonight, but you want to send us an email, there's a feedback form. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Luther. Other comments?
For the benefit of my neighbors, when they're through with their process, the vote that comes to the people is going to be at next November's election, which is to say one that people are probably going to turn out for. So pay attention. You won't have to do anything extra other than pay attention beforehand, because the timing is such that it's going to be a vote that many people will turn up for. Unfortunately, to start the process, they have to do it during the primary, which is a low turnout in the municipal primary. But next year's a national election. If you don't show up for that, well, shame on you.
Mr. Chair, since this is
yes, Mr. Phelps.
Since this is coming up a lot in the discussion, I think this is true, but I actually wanted to know it.
when that vote were to take place, if that vote were to take place, I think we have to provide a copy of the charter at each polling place for the election. Is that
It's a
correct?
public question, I think you would have the plain language description of the question. That's something that the county election board would have to provide.
You have to do that, but the charter itself is more comprehensive than the
Yeah, you
plain
would-
language question.
We would provide that before the election. We could put it in a
Right,
public
but the
question.
the document itself, I'm sure it'll be posted online, but I think, don't they literally have to have a copy of it in the polling place?
I don't think in the polling place, but prior to that, in public access, it's up to you, you would put printed, many commissions put printed copies in local libraries, at the city hall, the municipal building. Some have even gone so far as to print up small copies of it mailed to people, or synopsis, you know, and mail it to people. It all depends on your budget and how much you want to, how deep you want to get into education. Some have even printed the whole thing in the newspaper, you know, as the newspaper provides the space.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for that. Other public comments? All right, thank you very much. We're moving on. Our next item on the agenda, review of questionnaire responses from city directors. I think it was the October meeting, we voted to ask questions to get feedback from the city directors. We have received the responses and they've been distributed to all the commissioners. The responses will be posted on the website after the meeting, so you'll have access to them as well. So I will open it up to sort of the committee as a whole for any discussion that you would like on these.
So,
Mr. Barber.
first I'd like to just thank the members and Ms. Mayor, thank you for having your staff complete these, and you got some good comprehensive information from them. I particularly like to thank Patrick Hopkins, who, as no longer a member of the city and a retired man, has plenty of time on his hands to write a very comprehensive report, which I found just incredibly illuminating, really set the tone for expectations of where we could go and get some good understanding and information. I found it extremely, just all the responses were really great. And the citizens, if you have time to read through those, I think it would really help to inform the process and understand what the city and some of the challenges that the city is facing. And I thought it was really interesting that we got, virtually uniform responses about some of the issues and what's really challenging the people and they're trying to do to work with the city.
Yes, Ms. Ruva.
I was very impressed by the directors, their level of professionalism and their knowledge. I mean, it just seems like there's some really deep knowledge about local government and public servants who really care about this community. These will be posted on the website in that material section. I encourage everyone to read them.
Mr. Falcon.
So there's a lot to read, but I agree with what was said. It's an informative read, and I think it's an informative read if you want to understand how the city sees its business being conducted and the various changes that they've experienced over the course of the last 15 or so years. Not everyone, but a lot of these directors are people who have served in multiple administrations and have a wide perspective. We received responses from a number of different department heads, I think really all of them, and this time set aside to talk about them. So if you don't mind, I'd be interested in just going down through and sharing a little bit of my reflections on what I found in here. I don't want to overdo it, but so Patrick was the previous administrative services director. So he's reflecting that experience, and I pulled out, he really sees the Treasury office. He said the Treasury office is a sole front-facing customer service operations department. The Director of the Administrative Services Department sees the Treasury office as his function. In the previous meeting we had, I think what we heard was that there's some disagreement about the role of the elected treasurer in their office. And I was hoping to hear from Administrative Services and the treasurer about some of that discrepancy, but I just think it's reinforced here by both the former Admin Services and current Admin Services Director that they see that as their role. And I understand that legally it's been also established that way too, in that there's like a signing over of authority. And I think that's relevant to how we think about what we might do going forward. Another consistent theme, and I can't say I'm surprised to hear this from city department heads, but some of these city department heads have worked in other places, said pretty uniformly that they feel that the structure of the government currently is, let me put it this way, I think Director either Delfs or Douglas Smith, the chief planner, basically said, oh, here it is. City lines are highly effective small government. I do not see any sweeping change of government structure that wouldn't do more harm than good. I thought that was a pretty declarative statement. And in many of these, they said, too, that the continuation of the form of strong mayor government is an important ability to give the voters of the city accountability over how the city is run. That was a fairly consistent finding. The other thing I just pull out is that throughout all of these, and I have examples of all this that I could just read, but the directors talked pretty extensively about changes that they've made to their structure of their organization to take on more tasks, to do things that were previously done by other people, to reorganize themselves in such a way that they're getting each year more, I think they use the word lean, honestly. Like the nice word is efficient, but they're calling themselves lean. So I just, there's so much to talk about in this, but those are the things that stood out to me.
Yeah, they said, Chief Planner Smith said that I often feel like many staff wear many hats because we are a lean team that works very hard on behalf of the citizens. So I heard that in multiple responses.
In the planning one, it was interesting because he says, or CPAD I should say, planning under CPAD, that came about as a fairly recent reorganization where they took on a bunch of things that were in other places with different structures of management. I assume to be the lean in the way that Douglas Smith described. I thought it was interesting how Department of Neighborhood Engagement has kind of absorbed all these management responsibilities for things that had been diffused into other places before as well. And I think there's probably benefits to that by putting neighbors first and foremost in those choices, like Luke, for example. Luke does tourism. Putting residents first in the development of tourism planning seems actually really good and important. So there's so much in here I could talk about today.
Thank you. Other comments? I will jump in and your comment about lean. The use of the word lean always worries me. I like efficient. I like the fact that it's efficient. Lean. One of the comments that we hear recurringly is, well, you know, and it doesn't matter if you're talking local government, state government, federal government. You constantly hear that, well, government is bloated and it's a waste and so on. And the use of the word lean to me describes that there isn't bloat, that there's only so much you can cut. And if you cut more, and I was thinking this as I was reading through this over the last week, you can't cut any more without, I'm trying to think of the term I want to use, without harming the body politic. That you can cut away fat, but when you cut away muscle, you damage the body. And that was kind of the recurring theme that starting with all the way back to, Patrick Hopkins that served under three mayors, I think, and brought up that the trying to make the government more efficient and lean started under Mayor Stork. He continued with it under Mayor Gray, and they've reached a point where it's like, we actually have the luxury of having the efficient government, but somebody will always say, well, why does this person get paid this? Why does this person get that? And they're legitimate questions to ask. But overall, from all of the directors, it was, I don't think we can do our job without, we can't cut more and still do our job. You know, the next cuts will hurt people. They will hurt safety, they will hurt security, they will hurt, so, yes, Mr. Dafford.
So, I don't have anything super duper deep, but I do want to reflect on exactly what you're pointing out, and also Mr. Hopkins' comments. I actually really enjoyed that you used the word organism to describe the city, because I love using biological metaphors to describe our overarching organisms, as you put it. And to use another metaphor, it's like, you know, our genetics, our DNA, there's little ends that are extra bits, so when they replicate and copy, they can lose some. But once you lose so much DNA, you start to get issues like cancer, for example. So I think there's something to be said about cutting too much and how it can damage the overarching future of the city. But I also want to take that reflection to another end and say, I was upset to read that Mr. Smithville had asked Mr. Hopkins to resign at the time, because I do think there's part of our quote-unquote genetic code that we're not getting a whole lot of response on right now, only because the time for that has passed. Like the city used to have a little bit more political diversity, like there used to be, for example, Republican mayor. And I don't know that we're getting a whole lot of reflection of those times. And I still would love to hear more about, even if we can't find many people, I still would love to hear more from those perspectives, simply because we live in a city that's a 60-20-20 split, Democrat, Republican, and other. And I just want to make sure that those voices are included in the way we think about the new charter.
Yeah, I guess I had another take on reading everything and reading the questions and the answers. And I guess I'm looking, as I understand our role as commissioner, even though it's only one aspect of the charter is revenue. And when we're looking at these departments and their revenue, and I think the PFM did the report and said in 2019, if the city doesn't do anything, by 2025, we're going to be in this great deficit. So we just got the report yesterday on the steps that they recommended. So I'm still reading through them to get a clearer understanding. But there were some things that happened that I'm looking at, on the other hand, we say we use too much DNA, you get cancer. Well, if you tax people out, they're gonna die too. So, you know, at one aspect, we gotta see where that balance is. And we have been making cuts. So I guess, you know, like even now, we see that there are cuts that are being made in the government. So even if we are looking at increasing revenues, and I guess my question would be, and maybe to the mayor, I don't know, will those services go back up? Because we've been having a lot of changes since 2019 to now to help us prevent going into this deficit by 2025. And services are being cut, things are happening. If we look at the department of Chris Delph's department in 2019, there were 2 employees. You know, we asked him today how many employees does he have, so how lean are we being, knowing that we were going to hit a deficit in the next 5 years if nothing was done. Concerned about the Department of Neighborhood Engagement, I think it was a good thing, but when we're looking at taxes, we create a whole new bureau. that's taxpayers' money, and I'm looking at taxpayers, so I'm saying there has to be more things we can do, knowing that if we do form a charter, and the only revenue source that could happen is that earned income tax is the only thing we would really be able to add. We can't add and say, raise this tax and raise that tax. We don't have the ability to do that. So the revenue is just a small aspect of the charter. I think how the government runs and if it's efficient, a lot of these questions we see, I see it a lot. They say they don't duplicate service, but if you read the answers, and I encourage you to read their answers and their response, a lot of them do the same thing. Like a lot of the department heads will work with the administrative director, and then the chief of staff under them will work with the administrative director, and then the person under them will work with the administrative director. So there's a lot that goes on. I think under Chris Dell, there's a lot of bureaus that he oversees and a lot of things that he does, and it's almost how do we be efficient about it? You only have so much time to do one thing. So I think a charter could be good as setting up some more boundaries about what the bureaus do and not just necessary for revenue purposes. So a lot of the questions that they ask, like I had different questions they're really worried about it. We talk about Doug Smith, he was really concerned about the comprehensive plan that the city just adopted. How do we financially make that effective? We came up with a great plan for the next 10 years for the city, but financially, where are we and how is that even going to be able to be implemented? And he talks a lot about that, talks about the areas that, like the new prison area, what's going to happen there, and you look at the finances, the SOWE area, and different areas that he talks about in there. We talk about housing and how important it is that we have affordable housing, and they say they created 186 units. Financially, we look and say, okay, everybody knows the needs. We don't got to go over all the reports that we've been given about the need for affordable housing. So we created 186 units. So I'm not sure that there's not more that we can do as far as ending up taxing the residents or raising fees for the residents. I mean, that's what's the whole purpose. Wow. We started talking about this charter was to earn income, even though I've learned now that is only a minute part of having a charter is increase in revenue. So a lot of it would be government structure and other things. So there was a lot of questions I had that I would like to ask, but I am just now going over the recommendations that the PFN gave the city in 2019 of things they should do in order to prevent this deficit from occurring in 2025. Not really sure what all that we did do, because like I said, I just got it yesterday, so I'm just reading it now to see what we have done and what we efficient in what we've done. Because I think we owe it to the taxpayers. We keep talking about is the government running efficient. As long as your taxes are going up and you're paying more, or you're losing services, we can put it on paper, we're running efficient, but if it's causing our taxes to go up or we're losing service, it's got to be more efficient than that. So that's just my take on what I read. Yes.
Your Honor, one aspect, two comments before we, one is we may follow-up questions. If anybody has follow-up questions for any of the directors, if you provide them to me, I will make sure they get them and ask them to follow up. The second part is, while normally we welcome any comments from the public, our bylaws do not specifically allow it, so that any response would require consent of the commission. Is there any objection to Mayor Sarachi responding? Hearing none, please, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And we'll cover that for the rest of the meeting. Just making it official.
I'll be very brief. The PFM report that you were sent, I just want to put that into context for everyone. That was a work that was a financial condition assessment. You all received, and is on the city website, a slide deck that was presented in January of 2020. In the following January 2021, PFM finalized that report that you have in front of you and made a series of recommendations around revenues and expenditures. That was before the American Rescue Plan Act was passed. And I just want to situate that report at a time when there's a lot of things that were unknown. And the financial projections that are included in that do not hold true to what has happened relative to the city and the American Rescue Plan Act. So you need to look at that as a historical document as you're reading the numbers, okay? The other thing that I want to say is that we have been working on those recommendations. There are some of them that we did not follow through. You'll see that there are some recommendations in there for generating revenue by having a street tree levy or a light pole tax or something like that. Those are things that we did not advance as a strategy. There were other things that we did advance as a strategy and we will be sharing with you. I just, again, want to situate that in the context of history of 2021 before the American Rescue Plan was passed, and that the financial scenario planning continued after that report was issued, and you can continue to see those 5-year projections, and the most current one is associated with the budget that have been introduced to council, which you can also see on the city's website, which includes a 5-year projection for what our finances are, and you can go back in time and look at that, but just know the numbers that are in PFM are not accurate.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So I'll get specific. If we do end up speaking with Director Campbell, something he said that I thought was really interesting was his discussion around the water fund. So he said specifically, for years the water fund has contributed $4 million to the general fund to maintain operations. This is a burden to the water fund. Additionally, the only way to relieve the burden is to raise property taxes. I think I understand this previous year to a little bit of controversy was the first year in which less than $4 million was transferred from the water fund to the general fund budget. I think it was only $2 million, it was like half that. Mayor Morris didn't like it. And I think I remember at the time, Director Campbell basically said, if we don't start investing the money we are making on the water system into the water system, you're not going to have clean water. So I thought that was like a very, it's like a super direct example of the push and pull that we're dealing with. And I don't actually know if the budget that's been proposed keeps the $2 million or goes back to 4. If the mayor would respond, I'd appreciate it.
This year it continues at 2 with the expectation that in 2025 it will revert to 4. And the only reason why we could reduce it to 2 is because we're using ARPA revenue replacement funds to fill that gap. We reduced it to $2 million to provide more of an operating reserve so that we could advance design costs for infrastructure improvements. Historically, the city would finance design costs and construction costs all at one time, and in that way we were not following best practices as it relates to securing bond funds and spending those bond funds expeditiously to get to construction. So there's a sequence of events, but it is absolutely true, the push and pull that is described by Director Campbell, and he feels quite passionately about this. That the water fund is supporting police and fire in lieu of raising property taxes, in his view, to the detriment of continuing to invest in our water system.
One follow-up to Mr. Feldman. Like I said, while the directors have chosen not to come in,
I know what you mean.
please give me any questions and I will forward them on to them. Okay, yes, Mr. McGrath.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just sort of, I'll try not to be redundant with some of the other comments because I generally agree with some of the things I'm hearing from the other commissioners. You know, my takeaway is most people are saying things are fine, but kind of barely so, and that more resources would enhance their effectiveness, advance services, you know, allow us to, you know, be more appropriately staffed, especially in public safety. So, you know, that's probably, you know, so as I think about that as far far as some of our next steps, and I think we need to, certainly, to the public comment earlier, first thing we need to do is avoid financial distress and not let ourselves fall into that. And then I think about what else. Well, we need to remain an attractive place to live and improve, where we can, the affordability of living here for a lot of people, which adding taxes doesn't necessarily do that unless, other things sort of start to balance that out. And then also remain an attractive place for other things, economic development with both local and out-of-town developers. And I guess I feel like, it might be a little bit more of a delicate, threading the needle process than we think. So I think, if we are talking about about activating or expanding our earned income tax, to provide more resources to what we're hearing from these directors, we also need to balance that against the things that may not overdo it and start to discourage economic development, investment, and make this a less affordable place to live. So, and I guess I do have a series of questions, but I think they feel that I'd like to address to some of the directors, but I think they feel like they're more appropriate for the next phase when we get into crafting the charter. Might be a little premature now, in terms of just what's in front of us now. So I think, but what I would say is, as we get to that point, might be, I would probably enjoy an opportunity to have them come in person and have more of an exchange than a written thing, if they're agreeable to that.
Okay.
We can talk more about that later.
Absolutely.
And I would ask, if we do decide to draft a charter, do we think that they will come in? I mean, we're asking them to come in now and they're not. Do we feel more strongly that once we say yes, we want to draft a charter, that the department heads will come in? Because we asked to speak to them now and they won't come. So if we say we're going to draft a charter, we have questions for them. How are we feeling?
Well,
Did we ask them to come to they said
Yes.
no?
yes,
Yes.
The director?
When were they asked?
I don't remember that.
last week.
You only asked them last. Sorry.
But no, I mean, what it was, I invited each of the directors to come in if to respond to any additional questions, reminded them or pointed out to them that it was their choice, that they did not have to. We do not have subpoena power. We cannot require anybody to come in. What I was informed was that it would be preferred at this point that any further discussion with them should be done in writing. So that's the response I have.
So we thinking it might be different if we say yes, I
have no idea.
I mean, you got questions you want to ask.
We can always ask and
Well, like I said, I mean, I think that for our purposes right now, the responses that we've gotten are very helpful.
Yes.
And I think, the kinds of things that I want to learn more about, get into a level of detail that doesn't seem, I'm not sure it's, I don't know that we need it now, but I think we will want it later. So I mean,
we can ask, we can always ask, and as I said, we do not have the authority to obligate anybody. They can choose to come in, they can choose not to. All we can do is ask.
I would suggest too, that for most of the questions we have, even the level of detail that we got in the responses now, that we would not get that if we asked in person. Getting more feedback and more detailed information is much more conducive to written responses and in similar fashion to what we've got so far. So I would encourage us, and it would be, knowing the time that they're already serving in public interests, to sit here through a 2-hour meeting for, just a nicety as opposed to really having conducive conversation and effective answers, I think would be done much more effectively through the written response.
I would agree with that, and I would say, if they, as long as we're able to still ask some questions and that they would still respond back to us, that would be, I think that would be okay.
Well, as I said, we can ask anybody any question at any time, and it's up to them whether they decide whether they want to respond. Well, actually, when we get to the questions of the mayor, we'll be discussing that in a little bit more detail. That's their decision. Like I said, we can ask. Sometimes the answer is no. And as Mr. Barber said, I think there's a lot of, there's a point to be made. I can only speak for myself. If I had a group that wanted to speak to me, I personally would prefer you give me my questions, I'll write them out. If you want me to come in and read my answers, I'm fine with that. But I'd rather not be put on the spot and say, now what about this, what about that? There is a point where it starts to feel like an interrogation, and it is the last thing that we even want to give the impression that we're trying to do. We're just trying to get educated about what everybody does. And so, yeah, I think the idea of follow-up questions, and again, keeping it open that at any point, anybody may come in and discuss, well, any point, we only have a few more meetings, so, before that phase, but, and adding them in, as if we choose to proceed, could be a very useful step to take.
I have another question, and this is basically if we would do a charter, and I would like, if the mayor don't mind asking, do we have an administrative code? That you know?
I'll answer that.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Your current administrative code is the third-class city code, as modified by the optional charter. If the commission elects to draft a charter, and then a charter is approved by the electorate, it then becomes the role of the administrations to draft the legislative branch, what would be created out of your new charter, out of your new form of government, to draft the charter.
A new administrative code.
The administrative code, which I will be honest, will in large part most likely include a vast majority of what's already in the third-class city code, and there'll be, some changes to it. That's typically what happens.
One of my understandings, and this is just sort of adding on to what the solicitor said, was that a charter can be as extreme or as subtle as the commission would choose to write. I think it was pointed out to me a few months ago, and there was a county that went under home rule charter that kept everything 99% exactly the same as what they had before. They added a solicitor to the minority commissioner. But it opens the ability to amend it and so on. So, and this is sort of addressing some of the questions sometimes the public have. A new charter does not necessarily mean we're going to completely turn over the city and say, now let's start over. It could be very minor. It could be huge. It could be little. But the voters get the last say. They get to say in the end of whether to do it at all, to do any of it. Others. Great. Thank you very much. I will tell you, the debate is the eye-opener. It's listening to a colleague say something that I read every word of this, just like I'm sure every one of you have. And as soon as somebody says it, it's like I look at it and say, I didn't see it that way. And you make it an excellent point, or I saw it a little differently. And I appreciate this ability to address it how we all see it in the issues that we have. And thank you all for the thorough discussion. Before we move on, is there any other discussion or comments anybody would like to make about the city director reports? Yes, Mr. Dash.
Not necessarily about the content itself, more a reflection on our conversation tonight. I think what the city of Lancaster has done a really good job of through Mayor Sriracha's administration especially is the empowerment of residents. Like, I think we've seen a shift in the Department of Neighborhood Engagement. And to note, the department, even though it was a bit controversial to create a new department versus a bureau, or office rather, I think is exemplary of how Lancaster is trying to empower residents. And I think that the questions we maintain about the Treasury, as we may or may not move forward in the charter drafting process, could potentially allow us to envision ways to financially empower our residents in a collective manner. Because something that, right now it feels like the city, to address certain problems like affordable housing, we need some big entity to step in and make an investment. But I don't see why we can't collectively come together as a community to invest our pennies to make a full dollar on a project. But I just don't think that mechanism exists yet. And I think it'll be interesting to see the conversations we have about the Treasury.
Thank you.
And you said we can submit other questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Send them to me, whatever questions you have, and I will get them to the appropriate director, hopefully to get responses from them. I will say to Mayor Sriracha, thank you for not imposing a shade tree tax.
Yes.
As what I think is one of the amazing aspects of Lancaster City is the fact that we really are a tree city. And while I would never do it, I like the trees in my yard and the trees on the street in front of my house. There are people that if somebody said, well, there's a shade tree tax, they will immediately go out and cut down their tree. For whatever reason. So thank you very much for not having to do that. Any other questions or comments at this stage? All right, thank you. Moving on. Making sure, since I always get out of order. Agenda item number 8, questions for the previous mayors. So just to update everybody, as we saw, we proposed a set of questions for the three previous currently alive mayors. So the Smith-Gaul administration is not part of it. And they were sent out well over a month ago. The response I received, and I did forward that on, I think I forwarded it on to everybody. I try to forward on everything I get. I received a response from Mayor Gray saying that when he received it, he contacted Mayor Stork and Mayor Morris to discuss this. And as a group, they decided that they would prefer not to respond to written questions after we just discussed the idea that, at least me, I feel more comfortable with written questions. They would prefer not to respond to written questions, but would like to meet with the commission in person. I haven't responded to him yet. I wanted to have the commission weigh in. So the first part is, would the commission be open to meeting? It could either be in our January 4th meeting. I could invite them to come in if they're amenable to that, to address us and provide any feedback and respond to any questions. If necessary, we could try to create another meeting. It's a question of scheduling and everybody's schedule. So would the commission be for that, against that, opposed to that?
To having the prior mayors come in?
Inviting them to come in. I haven't my thought was I will, whatever the commission decides, I will contact Mayor Gray tomorrow, copying Mayor Stork and Mayor Morris and asking them, if he would, he has, the way the letter read, he has taken the initiative to act sort of as a facilitator for it. So I was going to plan on going through him.
So I think,
yes.
So I think with all the discussion that we had either at last month's or the month before meeting, when we all talked about, having that input from those prior mayors, However, we can get that information to include that as part of our assessment, I think would be beneficial.
So I should invite them. I will see if they, okay. Mr. McGrath?
I feel like, it's one thing to, make these requests to current city administrators and other folks who have an active connection to the city. I think, for retired mayors, we should be grateful for whatever we're gonna get from them, and we should accommodate, whatever they prefer. And if they wanna come, if they prefer to come in person, that sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Exactly.
Mr. Barton?
I mean, just, would we get more effective and better response from them if we conducted the interviews with them similar to how we're conducting the interviews with some of the other municipalities? That it's a small team of folks rather than it being a public setting, we could get just more concise, succinct feedback without it being politicized and necessary.
I can present it to them however the commission decides. If the commission, my own opinion is that I would prefer the three of them coming in and meeting with all of us at the same time. But if the commission would prefer to try to set up a meeting with each one individually with one or two or three people, I would defer to whatever the commission wants. Ms. Ruffo.
My concern is having three mayors who are politicians, who likely like to talk. We have a short time frame, and we will, in theory, be reporting about the municipalities that we have all interviewed. So I was going to propose a smaller team conduct a public meeting at a different time, and we can report back. I know it's an extra step, but I don't have time to put another meeting in my schedule. I would be happy to hear back from folks who want to interview the mayors. I do think it should be public though, so it does get a little challenging. That's my only worry, is the time frame. So maybe we just have to give them we have to be very succinct, make sure that they have a timer. Give it 20 minutes that's my concern.
That's a lot to ask.
But I understand the importance of getting their feedback. Historical information is important. They all ran their administrations differently. They have different experience. So it is important information to get. I'm concerned about the amount of time we have left and the amount of information we have to get in order to make a decision.
Okay, Ms. Elias?
I was just going to say, I agree with that, and I think that's a great idea, because I think as much as I would like for them to come here and hear from them here in a meeting, I think that, especially with there being three of them, it's probably going to take more time than we would have. So, I would be in favor of meeting with them on a separate night, or time, whatever that would be.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, given the amount of time that I'm thinking that we're going to spend talking to the other municipalities, and that's basically going to be like one person from each of those municipalities. We're going to have three different administrative leaders, and trying to do that with 9 of us potentially asking questions. And I just think it's setting us up for either having a really truncated amount of information that they're able to share, and it's not having the efficacy of gathering the information that we truly want, and just trying to expedite a meeting that doesn't really get to the heart of the matter. I'm concerned about that.
Okay, so my take on this side of the room is requesting that we create a special meeting, invite the mayors, hopefully we can set up a time for them to have a special meeting. All meetings would be public. This would come down to scheduling. Both Mr. Harris would have to find a venue and such. I'm assuming it would still be, it would be an official meeting, it would require a quorum, or we could create a subcommittee to do this. My question is, what does this side of the room have to think about this?
I agree with that.
I spoke to you earlier and said we need to have another meeting.
Yes,
So
you had
I
mentioned
really
that.
believe that
So,
it
yeah.
needed to be another meeting.
Absolutely. Mr. Dash.
I'm 100% happy to have another meeting. My only thing is I want the venue to be City Hall because of I have to be at those meetings then if it's off-site, and it can sometimes strain my schedule. So if they could be at City Hall so we can utilize city technology, that'd be wonderful, because it would relieve a little pressure for me to ensure that it gets out there.
Okay.
And then that would have the added benefit of, a good, robust, environment where the meeting could be really successfully recorded. Then anybody who wants to rewatch it in their own free time has the ability to do that.
Okay, so, yep.
We've already posed the questions to them.
Yes.
I think we should stick to those same questions. They've already seen them. They could have pondered them by that time, and all we want to know are the answers to those questions.
Okay, I will pass all this on
I think we
to
should
Mayor Gray.
ask questions if we would like to.
Well, I think that at any point we could follow up. But we should take an approach, I agree, we should take an approach of we provide you a set of questions and these are the things we're interested in. And if it wants to go another direction between they and us, that would be as it would be.
So if they're listening now,
If there's,
most prepared.
all right, what do I want Ray for this? Mayor Gray, if you're watching, please call me. No, fine. There seems to be a unanimous consent, no need for a vote or anything. I will contact them and work with Mr. Harris about trying to set up a time in the next couple of weeks. As Ruth said, we are under a bit of restrictions on time, but also on venue. And I do agree that I think it should be in City Hall when that's available. So,
Just as in an effort to kind of expedite the process and provide flexibility, does it have to be a full meeting that has a quorum? Could we do this as a committee? I'm just thinking, and if we are using the full technological resources of the city, that we can, so I'm just thinking, try to schedule an evening between now and
January 4th.
January 4th, I can tell you it's going to be virtually impossible.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, may I pursue?
I was just going to
try it out. So
yes.
I think you could designate a committee. Keep in mind, this is a public meeting. So therefore, even if it's just a committee that is running the meeting, all members of the commission would be entitled to attend, which means, the committee could allow them to sit, ask questions. We do this with city council where we have all of our committees serve at one time and then there's a meeting of the whole as part of it. So I think the answer is yes, and I would recommend you do it as a committee. And if you do it as a committee of 3, then a quorum is 2. And keeping in mind, as long as 2 of that committee can make the meeting, if 7 others are fine, you're good. You may not find a meeting where all 9 can go. The second thing I would note to you is to think about flexibility. For the mayors, as I understand it, are all retired, and you will have potential more time available in City Hall and council chambers during day hours than might be available in evening hours. And the meeting can be daytime based on the committee's availability as well. So just some suggestions to try and help you.
Great, thank you. My suggestion would be we contact them about their availability with the idea that if the commission agrees, I could assign a subcommittee that agrees to meet at that time. I'm a little concerned if they say, yes, we'd be very happy to meet on December 28th, but 4 of us could not do it, and then say, well, we already picked that person to be on the committee, and now what do we do? So that if you're okay with that, I would I would set it up and then let you know what they say, and we can come up with who would be willing to do it, who would form the committee.
Capacity.
Any other? Great. Question from the press. Well, we just have to take this
A
question.
suggestion from the press.
Yes.
Tim Stuber, One United Lancaster. When we see people testifying in front of Congress, they often make a brief opening statement. The commission may want to request something like that, directed towards the questions previously asked. And that might address some of Mr. Barber's concerns about getting some information out in a concise manner.
Okay. Take that suggestion. Although I know it takes me 15 minutes to introduce myself, so I'm not sure what the brief statement really is, but to me, this is, I'm on, well, in 4 days, I'm on winter break, so I actually have time. So, for the first time in the last 3 months. Any other questions or comments on this that, before we move on? All right, thank you. Item 9 on the agenda, I've been working with mayors of the 7 cities that we agreed to interview. I have heard back from several of them about that they thank you and we will look at these questions. I have contacted them all a second time trying to arrange specific meeting times that we can set up a Zoom meeting. Of those, I have gotten a response from Mayor Cusat and I'm trying to remember Altoona. Pacifico. Mayor Pacifico of Altoona with a list of times. I've contacted those of you on the committees for Hazelton and Altoona. And of course, that means the Hazelton, the 2 meetings that the committee can meet aren't the same day, so we have to work something out. My plan is to contact them again, as was suggested, pick up the phone and call and ask for the scheduler, and find out, try to force the issue. I will work on that, start doing that. Like I said, I've heard back by email from 2 of the 7. I think I've actually heard back from 5 of the 7, just responding that yes, we got the questions.
So the Hazelton mayor that set a date, they had dates that
they
they worked for the commission, or the other commission members that could meet on it?
No, Mayor Cusat provided a list of dates that were available for him, which I sent on to Ms. Cook and Ms. Elias. They were agreed to Hazelton. And now it's a matter of finding if we can come up with a common time with them.
Yeah, we did come up, so we sent
Oh.
an email this evening.
Okay.
2 o'clock or after.
20 to 2 o'clock or after. So it looks like we have a schedule. I will contact his office for that. So we do have
Mr. Chair.
yeah.
So we're setting these up. Are we to be using, I don't know actually if the city has a Zoom account we would use for this function or a Google Meet account?
We're supposed to use Teams from our...
The city
from our
Teams
city.
account. Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
If there's any issues with that, you can contact me. I'll put you in contact with David Capatch, who is our Director of Information Technology. It will certainly help you get in touch.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, so, and I will, Your Honor, yes.
Dr. Adams, I'll just say, if I can be helpful, I know I sent a letter to all the mayors,
Yes.
but I can
Thank you.
also reach out with a text message, a voicemail, just to remind them, and sometimes maybe I can just get that back to the top of their inbox.
Okay.
So if you want me to be helpful, just let me know.
I will let you know. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We all appreciate that. Anything else with that? We'll work on, I'll continue to work on that, and as I get more, I will be letting the appropriate people know. Our next item, 10th item on the agenda, our January meeting and our January 24th meeting. So right now, our next meeting is scheduled for the 4th of January. At this point, it was going to be at West Arts. Is that still?
It's confirmed for West Art.
Okay, it is confirmed it'll be at West Art. Depending upon, again, the mayors, how the previous mayors respond. At this point, the primary agenda item would be reporting back from the municipalities, what we have at that point. With that, the other part, and working with PEL, was a chance to then respond to what other questions. We're reaching the point where it's time to sit down and deliberate and make a decision. And so the question that Mr. Cross asked from me the other day was, let them know, what do we want to know? What do we want them to present? What do they want? Do we want to see what a draft charter looks like? Do we have questions about tax systems? Do we have questions about options? So the idea of that would be hopefully for the January 4th meeting. I would say, and I think I sent this in an email to all of you to think about that. I would say if you can let me know exactly what you would want, what you need to make an informed, educated decision. I can pass it on, and we can hopefully set up presentations for that meeting with just exactly what we need to have, what we need to know, or what we still have questions about. Yes, Spelman.
What is the actual deadline to make a decision on the first question?
Okay.
What is the date?
Okay, deferring again to the solicitor.
I don't know the date off, I don't know the specific date off the top of my head. It's towards the end of February.
That we would have to have a final report.
Yes, because, well, you actually would have to have the final vote and theoretically the report, yes. Because you've been talking about January, I have not focused my attention on the specific date at the end of February, but it is towards the very end. The certification of the election occurred towards the very end of May. 9 months from the very end of May is the very end of February.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it possible that we can get that date prior to our next meeting?
Sure, I just don't have it off the top of my head. Yeah.
I heard that.
I don't know, I don't remember the specific date of the.
Yeah, the 24th was set primarily because it was available, and the issue is with the vote, if the vote is to not proceed, there needs to be time to actually generate the final report, to write and approve the final report, send on, which can't be done overnight. But if it needs to be changed, again, that's up to the commission. They can move it. Just keep in mind that there is a deadline. First, I think it was Mr. Dasher you had.
Even if we vote in January, do we lose that other month, or is that month still part of the process, is my only question.
That might be it.
So it's an interesting question. I don't believe there's any cases that have interpreted that yet. The statute reads 9 months from the end of the initial period. Whether that's really the vote to proceed or the end of the 9-month period is an open question. I would take the position that you essentially get an 18-month period, and therefore I think you're good with an additional 9 months from February on, and it's actually 9 and potentially 2 depending on how you proceed. There's another 2-month period that can be added on if you are doing something else with your charter.
Thank you. I misunderstood the question. So you're saying what would be, does the vote start the next clock, is what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that.
The position I've been taking is that it really is 9 months from your deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Your deadline, again, is it's somewhere between February 17th and February 27th. I don't remember the specific date of the certification of the election. So,
I thought it was the 28th.
yeah, it was somewhere right in that range. And you would get 9 months from that date on. If you elect to proceed with writing a charter, you'll have until 9 months from that February date to complete.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, please.
just for me, in case this is helpful, I'm going back to an email that I think we all received from Mr. Harris. And in that email, state law requires, this is when we're originally getting sworn in, requires oaths to be taken within 10 days of the certification of election, which is scheduled for June 5th. So I wasn't, I guess,
it was actually, it ended up going earlier than June 5. The certification went at the end of May and they.
So we expected no later than June 5th, but it happened actually a little bit
Right,
earlier.
and your original date, I believe, when you were elected, when you were sworn, was around June 3rd, if I recall.
Okay.
So we're being punished for the efficiency of the county government?
I've never quite heard that before, but yeah.
I just wanted to point out that I was looking at the calendar, just if we keep the dates that we have set up, so we're meeting on the 4th, we have this special thing in between, talking to the former mayors, we're meeting on the 24th, then the following week would be our regularly scheduled meeting. It's a bit much. Like, are we gonna keep that meeting on the 1st? I can't remember why we felt we needed to do the meeting, this vote on the 24th as opposed to the 1st.
It was in discussion with the fact that if we vote to not proceed, we still have to provide a final report. And the final report has a deadline. And writing a final report is not an overnight process, that's all. You don't want to be voting the Thursday before the report is due.
Hey, you want an overnight report? Get the college students, I'm telling you, man.
ChatGPT.
Mr. Adams, I just wanted to point out that City Hall is not available on the 24th.
It's no longer available.
It is not available. I don't know where that date came from.
Yeah, it was a Wednesday. That was the, I thought that was.
24th is actually Tuesday, isn't it?
No,
It's a Wednesday.
it's a Wednesday.
Okay. I have something written down.
While he's checking, may I also just offer that if there is a decision to advance a charter, it is actually not 9 months to write the charter. It's less time because there needs to be time given for the public to understand what's in the charter and to educate the public. And that process really needs to start in earnest no later than Labor Day weekend.
Sorry, what parts?
The process of educating the public about what's actually in the charter needs to start no later than Labor Day weekend.
Okay.
Because you need all of September and all of October leading up to the November election to be able to really explain to the public what is in the charter.
The city's position is if this were to proceed, it would be best if we completed that work before Labor Day. That's a good thing to know.
And I think that you really do need to have, for the public's understanding, that amount of time for discourse and engagement.
Doesn't matter, Mr. Wright, sure.
Building on the mayor's comment, and I defer to the solicitor on this for clarification, but I believe there's a 13-week period before the election that it needs to be provided to the county election bureau. The question needs to be provided to the county election bureau.
The question needs to be provided, but the actual charter isn't necessarily a full question. So I think that's where the mayor is going, which is while you could come up with the question within 13 weeks, you really actually need at a minimum 9 is the mayor's position to educate. You might be tweaking things for the 4 weeks before that, but in order to draft it, you do need to get it to the public. One of the commission's responsibilities is to educate the general electorate on the charter they've drafted. I think where Mr. Adams was working on trying to have a special meeting at the end of January was to, in part, give you more time if you chose to move forward with the charter. I will also note that going back to some of the very original meetings you had when we talked about your meeting frequency, I believe the folks from PEL and myself indicated that during the study stage, the once a month was likely to be okay, but when you went to the charter drafting stage, it is the expectation that you will need to meet far more regularly, whether that's twice a month or more. Previous municipalities that have gone through that stage, it will be a time-intensive, that is the time-intensive part, and there's no way to really change that. When you're thinking about what the charter is, you'll have both discussion and drafting. So again, yeah, it's shorter, but you probably are going to be meeting more frequently. And I would be suggesting that you're at minimum going to be meeting twice a month once you move into that drafting stage. Meeting more than that could be a challenge because you're going to need to give your professionals time to get back to you with, well, we want to try this, and you get some suggested language, get us templates. So there needs to be time to build back and forth with PEL, with myself, who are going to be hopefully helping you with some of that drafting difficulty and options. So just alerting you that is probably, you're thinking it's a shorter time. It's the same time, maybe shorter, but your work is going to be more intense.
Chair.
Yeah.
Can I ask you another question?
Absolutely.
So should we vote to not proceed with your other clients? How much time do they need to write that final report? Is 3 weeks sufficient, or is 4 weeks really a better option?
I would say 3 to 4 weeks would be an adequate time period.
Question comes back to January 24th, is that?
I stated correctly, I'm sorry, the 24th is a valid date for City Hall.
Okay.
It is available.
Okay, so that is still a possibility.
Just since we are talking about a lot of timeline things, because I've been wanting to ask about this 2-month period for quite a while. How would that 2-month period play in if we go towards districting? Would it actually push out the general vote?
Yes, you would end up not being part of the November general election. It would take you into the next election, which would be a primary, because you would be beyond it at that point. So you don't have to utilize the extra 2 months. You are able to utilize the extra 2 months.
And that's the reason to draw maps and draw.
Yeah, the reason for the 2 months is typically if you've elected to proceed with ward voting of any kind, you have to have the detail in order to do that, which means that your maps and districts have to be drawn. I think the state legislature, when it adopted the home rule charter law, understood that that's something that's kind of a separate task after the original decision is made, requires the use of experts, outside parties, it takes time. So yes, that is a time constraint that's there. You don't have to take it, but if you're going to have ward voting included, then the time frame that the mayor's talking about having your charter drafted, quite frankly, is going to be even sooner, because you're still going to need that. You're going to need 2 months to get.
So if we wanted to go toward, let's say we wanted to go towards drafting a charter, and let's say we wanted to go towards district representation, if we utilize those additional 2 months, we go to the primary date election, but if we could forego utilizing those 2 months and still hold it in the general.
It's your option. It's the commission's option. You are given the opportunity to have an additional 2 months.
Yeah, you will have one of your first questions will be the structure of the governing body and the method of election. So if in that early period we decide to investigate wards, you could discuss with the county or someone that has a GIS information and come up with suggested wards at the same time you're writing the language. So you wouldn't need the extra 2 months if it was time of essence, that would be something a separate track would be pursuing while you were doing the other work.
This is such a specific, I'm forgetting the word right now, the specific question, but would we have to change the ward structure as it currently exists to create these districts, or can we create these districts without changing the wards? And I only ask that because the wards do have community character.
It depends on the distribution of the population.
Okay. Equal population within
Yes.
each district. You have to have equal population within
Right.
each district, and you can use the wards as a way of selecting those populations, and depending on what the numbers are, you may have to divide a ward to make the equal. It's redistricting. The state, you redistrict every 10 years after the census. If we choose to investigate creating wards, we are essentially deciding that we are going to redistrict every 10 years. And the questions that we will have to ask, who draws the lines? Politicians or citizens? How much is it going to cost? You've got to have expertise in mapping. You've got to have expertise in understanding data. It's a very lengthy it's a totally different conversation. It's really important. And from my perspective, we have not even asked the citizens if they want that. So we don't
I will say, I
know.
think we're moving a little beyond what we
Way
should
too
be,
far ahead of
where we
ourselves.
are right now. Bring this back to our.
Just try to take it back to square again.
Yes.
It's a time frame question that you will determine early on in your next stage, right? So as Jerry was indicating, Mr. Cross was indicating, quite frankly, that'll be one of the first questions you tackle. If you move, again, if you end up taking a longer period of time, and that's assuming that you choose to do that, you push the effect of a home rule into the next calendar budget year from an administrative standpoint, right? So, all of the changes that you would be implementing from a financial, that might be impacting the finances of the city, really wouldn't be able to go into effect at that point for an additional year. To the extent that the commission can keep it into the November general election, there are a lot of benefits. The first of which is a much broader election, which means that many more of the citizens of Lancaster are likely to pay attention and get an opportunity to determine whether to move forward with it. And quite frankly, for me, that's the most important one. A second one is that if some of the reasoning for the commission to adopt a new charter is based on trying to improve the finances, as spoken earlier, is trying to put the city in a position to avoid financial problems, again, moving in the 9-month period would be advantage. But your obligation is to determine the best, if you choose to draft a charter, is to determine the best structure for the city. And then we'll deal with those timeframes as we get there. But I think you should plan on and attempt to plan on meeting the 9-month deadline so that you're in the November of 2024 general election.
I think that's all to say that we probably need to keep the January 24th meeting.
I agree.
It feels good not to be over.
He said.
I was just going to say, it feels good not to be overruled for once, so I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm not sure, like I said, the item on the agenda is that we need to inform PEL of any questions that we would like answers to, or anything other than city reports, municipality reports, and possibly mayor reports, the previous mayors. So if you could let me know as soon as possible, and I can try to arrange for all that. Much more than I expected in the 10th item, agenda item, but is there anything else on that?
Yeah. So if we don't hear from these other mayors and get other information, do we have a plan or a backup if we're not getting anything from any of the mayors that we contacted?
Well, I mean, we will get it from at least 2 of them because they've already said committed. I think with Mayor Sracchi's help, I think we can hopefully make the arrangements with the others. I would never be so presumptuous to say we'll get all 7 to actually happen, but I would be very surprised if we don't get most of them. But as for an alternative, I don't know what alternative would you want? What would you?
I don't know, maybe other third-class cities that we didn't reach out to.
Well, we
It'd be
learned-
better to hear from somebody than nobody on how it's working. Like, we didn't pick Coatesville. Coatesville's a third-class city. Would that be something that we could ask? I'm just asking. I would like to have some information from some other.
So we will have from
Two.
some, at least from two, yeah. Yeah.
Just to be clear for the public and for us, in clarity, because we asked this question prior to the meeting, was to have the charters as a resource for those cities, those third-class cities who have written charters. We've asked for that documentation so that we can be even more informed of the questions that we may need to ask. Since we have all of this information now from directors of the city, we have a budget, all of those other items that, and resources that we've had, we will also have the actual charters from those other cities that PEO is going to provide to us.
We'll be sending it to the chairman now.
Yeah. And I'll make sure to get out as soon as I get it.
Yes. I was thinking about what Commissioner Cook was saying, that even if they don't get back to us, look at the charter and we can report back on that. Like, I know I happen to be the person to have to talk with Altoona, and I think Easton. I think Mayor Pacifico did get back to us. Mayor Pancho has not yet. But I found, basically by Googling the charter for both of those places, and pulled up a couple things and shared them with the other folks that are in the small group. And, you know, I just imagine the commissioners can do the same, and we can learn a lot that way.
Yeah, great suggestion, thank you. Any other items for the agenda, for that agenda item? Okay, number 11, is there any other business for the commission?
Yeah, when's the Christmas party?
I actually changed my tie before the meeting. I had my decorative one from school. I should have left it on. We could have claimed this was a...
So January the 24th meeting is on.
Yes, it's still the plan.
At City Hall.
Any other business items?
Are we going to put that date on the calendar, the public calendar?
It will be on, yes. Thank you, sir.
So before you go, I sort of tracked down this, it's hard looking on my phone, but I found the date of the certification of election was actually May 31st. So you're actually, you know, right at the end, at the absolute end of February, right? So 9 months. If we take it as months, because that's what they said, and don't take days, and we need to be conservative, I would say the last day of February of 2024 is that sort of date. Thank God.
We got a leap day. Next Monday.
It's leap year. Yeah, because a leap year you get an extra day. So I'm sorry it took me so long, but I was trying to track down the certification.
Okay. Any other business? Okay. Without objection, is there any objection to adjourn? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who attended. I hope you enjoyed your